now, one of the hottest segments in the automotive market is subcompact SUVs. They're taking over from cars. And so we thought, let's get a couple of them and do a comparison. So what do we got?
I am standing in front of the Honda HR-V, which is new for the 2023 model year, and next to it is the Mazda CX-30, and this one is in spicy turbo trim.
And it got some updates for 2022, so what we have here is a carried over model, whereas the HR-V has been redesigned into an all-new one.
But these are both very competitive entries in a hugely popular segment, and these two, from the spec sheet, look pretty close. They both cost within a couple thousand of each other. They both have 4-cylinder engines. They're both all-wheel drive, and they're both compact utility vehicles. Jill, how different could they really be? I mean, this one is black and this one is a shade of gray. How different could they really be?
Well, they actually are quite different, and it comes down to not so much the car as the customer. So we're going to have to drive them both and get an idea of how they're going to work for the kind of driver who's looking at them.
But before we get behind the wheel of both of these, we need to talk a little bit more detail about how they compare on the spec sheet. And for that, you have an actual, very detailed spec sheet with you.
I have notes. Well, we'll start with saying first off that each of these comes in 3 trim levels, and we are in the highest trim in each one.
So both of these are as expensive as they could be. Every option box checked.
Well, they don't even have option boxes. They come fully loaded as Hondas and Mazdas do. The only thing is that our Mazda has an extra charge coat of paint, and our HR-V has these racks which are accessories, and so they are not included in the price and they're not included with the car.
So this is the EX-L Navi, and that is the GT Turbo. So those are the top trims.
Right. And the Honda comes with only one engine. It is a 2-liter 4-cylinder, makes 158 horsepower and 138 foot-pounds of torque, and it has an automatic CVT, continuously variable transmission.
Meanwhile, under the hood of our GT Turbo tester is a 2.5-liter turbocharged engine, which makes 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque on regular gas. But if you did want to put premium fuel in it, you get 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. The decision is really up to you.
Right, but we'll also note that the Mazda offers 2 additional engines. In the base GX, you get a 2-liter, the same as in the Honda. It makes 155 horsepower and 150 foot-pounds of torque. A little bit more torque than the Honda, a little bit less horsepower. The GS and the GT without the turbo, they use a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, and that makes 191 horsepower and 186 foot-pounds of torque, which is more powerful than this, but actually doesn't cost as much. And all of the engines in the Mazda come with a 6-speed automatic transmission.
So you're saying that even though this one has a turbo, if we had the regular 2.5 engine, it would still be more powerful than the Honda.
And it would cost less.
Okay, let's talk about price. How do these two stack up in terms of as tested price, and where do they start at? Both of these start in the high 20s, correct?
The HR-V in its bottom trim starts at $28,960 before freight and taxes. The Mazda is a little bit cheaper, $27,050 in its base.
And both of these, for every price that we're talking about, the delivery, freight, and PDI on these are both just about $2,000. If we want to be exact, well, the Mazda is actually $1,995. So essentially tack on $2,000 for the real world price for both of these.
Right, and then taxes on top of that.
And local tax.
Now our EX-L Navi HR-V, $37,910. Our GT Turbo is $38,950. So our Mazda is $1,040 more than our HR-V, but as we'll get into, you get a lot more content for that, in addition to the more powerful GT engine.
Makes sense. So essentially, even though this one has the turbo engine, the turbo option is literally just the engine. If we want to be specific about it, you get black wheels, black mirror caps, and slightly larger exhaust tips. But interior content is the same.
It really isn't just about the numbers. It's about seat of the pants driving feel. So let's hop in the Honda and see what the differences are.
Let's go check it out. First of all, I give Honda props for having a sensible shifter. PRNDL. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? The only thing with it is your sport and your low are also on that. So you just have to make sure that you don't pull it down too far if you don't want to be in sport or low.
That is true. And the other thing is when you get in here, despite the fact that everything is entirely black, which I don't entirely like, I like the design of the interior. I like this big, wide center, kind of honeycomb pattern in the dash. All the climate controls are super easy to use. If I had a gripe, I would say the touchscreen is like dead level. It's straight on the dashboard. I wish it was kind of tilted towards the driver a bit, although it does make it equally easy for your passenger. And it is a touchscreen, which is not true in the Mazda.
That's true. And part of that is also the fact that the Mazda one is so much farther up on the dash. But everything in this touchscreen is very easy to use. I like that very much. And I also like the fact that this is a larger cabin, it's airier, it's more comfortable for me. I would like it if it had the power seat that the Mazda has. This one's, we call it a barber chair, where you've got to ratchet up and down and up and down. And if you have two different size drivers, as I have in my household, you get in and it takes forever to get it up or down.
Yes, the memory seating in the Mazda is pretty convenient. But I would say in here, there's nothing really offensive. It's very nice. And in fact, I like this little mini storage cubby here. It holds phones and your sunglasses and keys and such. There's a lot of convenient storage.
There is, and the wireless charger, which is missing on the Mazda.
Yes, that is true. I do enjoy the wireless charging. And overall, inside is just kind of a nice place. And I also like the attention to the soft touch materials where your elbows would go. It's a very comfy place to rest your arms.
Exactly. And then when we talk about driving, the steering is light. It's easy to maneuver it around. The brake pedal, it feels good without being too heavy. It's just that everyday driver feel to it. The one that you're going to take to the mall, to the grocery store, to run your errands. It's an airy cabin. There's more cargo capacity. It's practicality.
So I guess the other thing is moving backwards, that openness and feeling of space does continue in the back seats. These are larger than the Mazdas and I think more comfortable back there.
There is more legroom, definitely. So if you are carrying passengers on a regular basis, they are going to be a lot happier in the HRV than they're going to be in the CX-30.
The CX-30 doesn't have as much measured legroom in the back seat, but I think another thing that's harder to measure is that there just seems to be more glass and more light in the back seat, whereas the back seat of the Mazda is, well, a little cave-like.
It is. It's really a driver's car. Driver focused, passenger focused. It's not so much about the people in the back seat, whereas the HRV, yeah, you're talking, just people with children, people who have to carry folks around, need a place to put their stuff. As far as cargo capacity goes, yes, this one is larger. The one thing I don't like is that the back seats fold flat, but they're not in line with the cargo floor.
It's flat, but not flat with the cargo floor.
Yeah, so anything you put in, if it's a long item, it's going to be on a little bit of an angle, and that could be better.
Yeah. But I think I just see the general sense of practicality that pervades in this car. Like all the controls are very simple, easy to use. The intuitive shifter. This car is very practical and it's very drama-free. There's nothing really exciting in here. But there's also nothing
other than us.
Oh, that's true. And our choice in fashion. But otherwise, there's nothing really exciting in here. There's nothing that it does wrong. It is a nice car, it's very practical, and it does everything you kind of want it to do. But I think we'll see when we jump in the Mazda, things get a little more dramatic. Exactly.
This is almost like a downsized CRV. It's more SUV, and I think the CX-30, that's more a sporty crossover.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, on that note, maybe it's time to hop in the Mazda and check that out.
I think we should do that.
Instead of taking the time to get out of one car into the other, what if we just snapped our fingers and we were instantly in the Mazda?
Beam me up, Scotty.
And just like that.
Here we are in the Mazda CX-30.
And it is instantly a big noticeable difference in acceleration. Look at that.
Just a little, do you think?
That is like actually fast. This is a powerful car.
It is. That turbo really does kick in and get you moving.
Like we said in the intro, 227 horsepower on regular fuel, or 250 if you want to fill it up with the good stuff, and a lot of torque, 310 or 320 depending on your fuel. We don't often talk this much about horsepower on a crossover comparison, but in this case, it's such a massive difference, we kind of need to talk about it.
Well, and also the 6-speed automatic versus the CVT. So you get those crisp shifts, you don't get the noise from the CVT.
Mm-hmm. And we have paddle shifters too, which is kind of fun.
But one thing I will note is that the only mode that we have for driving here is either normal or sport, whereas the HR-V also adds eco and snow.
Like you said, the HR-V is kind of a shrunken SUV, whereas this feels like a sporty crossover. It definitely doesn't have the off-road focus or even, mal-weather focus of the HR-V.
Right. I mean, the HR-V is not an off-roader per se, but it does seem to be more in tune with, well, we've got heavy snow, we've got a cottage trail, something like this. The CX-30 could handle it. It seems more road focused.
Yes. And I would say, pulling ourselves inside, things seem a lot nicer in here. There's just an elevated, I think, sense of design and execution in this interior. The gauges are very elegant. The dashboard design, I like it as well. I think there's just a lot of really nice design inside this interior.
Absolutely, and even the exterior, again, styling is always subjective. I think the CX-30 is a better looking vehicle. The HR-V, it almost looks a little bit old.
It does from some angles. In fact, even though it's like a brand new car, so most people think, isn't this car already out?
Yeah, that is a possibility. And the steering feel is different.
It's a lot heavier here. In fact, I find all the controls in here are heavier. The brakes too. It is a bit more of a physical experience than the HR-V, which is super light. Now, one of the more polarizing features of this car is this little clicky wheel in the middle, which adjusts kind of everything. That's because that screen in front of us is not a touch screen. How do you like it?
I'm always a fan of simplicity. The benefit to it is that you can turn the dial and make things happen while you are driving without really taking your eyes off the road. The downside is everything requires a lot of steps that I don't think you have with the touchscreen. Like, for example, to adjust the head-up display, which is one of the features that the HR-V doesn't have, you've got to go into menu after menu to try and find that. Not a huge deal, but if you can avoid some steps, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I definitely think it's an acquired taste, and I think for a lot of people who demand a touchscreen in their car, it could be a breaking point. But then the other thing I like about this interior is it's got color in it. It's got red stitching, it's got red seats, it's got kind of a tan headliner, which the HR-V had as well, but it's not all black. I think that makes it a lot more interesting of a place to sit.
It does, but at the same time, this is a much tighter cabin. It almost feels a little bit claustrophobic to me, especially in the rear seat. The windows are smaller. The rear seat is much tighter. You have the drive shaft hump in the middle, whereas the HR-V has more of a flat floor. It just seems a lot more open. It is more suited to people who are going to carry passengers, whereas this vehicle, this is for the driver and the front seat passenger.
Exactly, and especially as we're driving on these little country roads with these nice little curves, the Mazda really does feel more at home here. It likes to kind of go through these turns, and it feels car-like, it feels sporty, versus you never forget while driving the Honda that it's a, CUV.
Right, and another thing is the content, where you get so much more for about $1,000 if you go for the turbo, and if you went for the regular 2.5 liter, it would actually be less expensive than the HRV, but you get such things as the head-up display, you get rain-sensing wipers, you get a cargo cover, a power seat with memory, you get tip-down mirrors, you get a power lift gate, and a few other things for just $1,000 more, plus that turbocharged engine. And if you took the turbo engine out of the equation and got the 2.5, the GT with the 2.5, you would still get more power and the same amount of content, but it'd be more than $1,300 less than our HRV.
The value proposition is really strong with the Mazda. That's one of the things I really like about it. But the Mazda does definitely have a smaller cargo capacity than the Honda. You do notice it.
Absolutely. And that's where we talk about the difference in the customer, where you've got to go beyond the numbers. If you have a family, you just want a small vehicle for running errands and lots of space in the back for your groceries, for your children, for your occupants, then you're going to go to the HRV. You want to have some fun with driving, you like the heavier steering, you like the corner carving.
If you like the sporty feeling.
Yeah, if you like the sporty feeling, then this is going to be your vehicle, because not everybody likes that heavy steering and the heavier brake pedal.
No, it's definitely a more involved experience, which some people may or may not want. So it sounds like we got to go to an outro and we've got to figure out which one of these is going to be the winner, because now that we're driving both of them back to back, they're really quite different despite how similar they are on your notes.
Exactly. I mean, they're both subcompact SUVs. They are within
a couple of thousand
price-wise, but when you start feeling how they drive, even the horsepower and everything aside, just the driving experience, the ride is firmer, which some people like, some people don't.
That's true. Well, it's time for us to hop out and declare a winner.
Well, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
All right, Jill. Well, now that we've driven both, we've got a chance to kind of experience how different the personalities of these two cars are. We like the practicality of the Honda, we like the sportiness of the Mazda, but now it's time to wrap it up and maybe even pick a winner.
Maybe even. And as you said, we're talking about vehicles with two entirely different personalities. Our HRV, it's all about practicality. Our Mazda CX-30, it's more on the sporty side. So I think we are looking at two entirely different types of customers, where we're looking at more of a family vehicle with the HRV. Here we're looking at maybe singles, couples, people with maybe one child. They don't really have to carry a lot of stuff, but they like that whole sporty personality that this vehicle gives them.
So I think in summary, we'd say that this one is better for if you have child seats in the back, if you're putting people in the back seat regularly, whereas this one is more for, say, you're buying as a couple with your partner and you don't need to put people, maybe you need the occasional third person, no talk of a child seat, it's going to be fine for that. They're for kind of different buyers, but they do cost about the same money, and so I think it's also worth talking about the content you get in both. And I feel like, honestly, you get a little bit more content in the Mazda. For example, you get things that I like memory seating, power adjustable front driver's seat, whereas in the Honda, even in the top trim, it's a fully manual adjustable seat. But conversely, the Honda does have wireless phone charging, which I like, and the Mazda actually doesn't.
Which is very surprising. They both have navigation, they both have heated front seats, they both have a heated steering wheel, they both have dual zone climate control. We can talk a little bit about that screen, and that depends on how you like to receive your information. With the HRV being the touch screen, here with the Mazda you have to use that controller, and that could be you know, just a matter of which you prefer, but I like a touchscreen.
I know, and a lot of people do, especially if you're more used to tablets. Using a touchscreen in the Honda is going to feel more natural than the click wheel in the Mazda. But when it comes down to it, do you think you could pick a winner, or are these cars too different to call it?
I think I'm going to call the Mazda, and I'm going to call that mostly on the content and the price, where we're talking about a far more powerful engine and a lot more features for $1,000 more. And if we decided that we didn't want the turbo and we wanted to get the 2.5, we're still looking at a lot more power, and now this, with all that content, becomes less expensive.
I think that's true, and the value proposition for the Mazda gets a lot stronger even when you consider that non-turbo 2.5 engine, which is still more power than the Honda. I think the design, for me, I like the design, I like the sporty flair of it, and I do think you just get a lot for your money. But that being said, if you do need the ultimate practicality of one of these vehicles, you should probably go for the Honda.
We're picking the Mazda as our winner, but that doesn't mean that the Honda is a loser. It's got that extra cargo capacity, it's a larger cabin. I feel a little bit claustrophobic in this one. So again, you can't go by the numbers. You've got to drive them both and do seat of the pants.
That's right. So if you're interested, you should try them out for yourself and see what you like, because the Mazda, while I do like it, it is a bit of an acquired taste with those heavier controls and the more cozy seating arrangement.
That's what we'll call it. So there you have it. We like both of them. They both have a lot going for them, but we're picking the Mazda as our winner. And for Driving.ca, he's Clayton Seams.
And she's Jill McIntosh.
And for more news and reviews,
don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
I think we should get in these cars and go get us some ice cream.
I think it's a good day for ice cream.